today.
Hello.
Did we start?
We started.
Oh.
I said hello.
Hello.
Come on now, Campbell.
Your drink
Okay.
is so noisy. It's distracting me.
Yeah, hopefully not. We're having to get a little close. We've got some environmentals going on right now that we're factoring in for. So, thank you for your patience in advance if we test them on this podcast. You're gonna have to say something, Campbell.
Okay.
So we were kind of talking before. We usually do a quick 10-minute, hey, what are we talking about today?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really know. We don't really have a plan on this one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's things going on, but when we want to talk about them on the podcast or how it helps other people, that's questionable. So,
Right.
trying to provide value to people listening, not just rambling about things that might be going on.
Right. Something I think that we always try to do is use personal experience to connect, even though the individual experience that somebody listening might be different. We obviously share some common things.
Right.
So sometimes when it's like, blah, blah, blah about personal stuff or personal life, it feels like, what are we talking for? Like, the purpose of this is to obviously flesh out thoughts. That's from the beginning, is to invite you in, kind of along for the ride, but we also recognize some of the work we do is valuable to share. So I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes when we're like, what are we going to talk about? We don't want to just talk about personal stuff without like a so what.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that we can talk about today is something we personally have talked quite a bit about. It's actually a topic, it's a mindset topic in the BTE Practice sample workout, which it's not a sample, it's an example actually, is the notion of projection and how projection shows up in our life. What does projection mean? How do we project? What do we project? And less concerned with why the projection might be happening and why there's less concern with the why, even though we know we still have to face that and recognize that. But different tools, have different uses. It doesn't mean that just because one is being used and the other use case isn't valuable. So I was thinking we can maybe jump in.
Yeah. Do you want to read the... Tell us the...
Sure, I can. So this is straight off of the Between the Ears Practice website, which is btwntheears.mykajabi.com. Go to the Instagram, the link is on there. And then if you click blog, there's a workout up there. So the workout is 30-minute row or run or bike. Every 4 minutes, row or run or bike as hard as possible for 1 minute. And the intent is to do it without the monitor, so you can't see the screen, and you have no data. Hopefully set a clock up to beep, but you shouldn't be training just to time. You should be training to intention, which is during the 4 minutes, all you're doing is just rowing, running, biking at a casual pace. Doesn't matter how fast or slow you're going, it's not about that as long as you're moving. And then the 1 minute is everything you've got, row as fucking hard as possible. So that's the workout. The mindset is projection. And I'll just read this straight from. So we project all the time. In many cases, we do so without knowing we are doing it, and for good reason. If you see something life-threatening, your brain sends signals to your body to take action. Preservation of life is a worthy cause for projection. But we can't live our lives in this way and expect development and progress to be sustainable, much less enjoyable. We want to thrive, not simply survive. When we project in our daily lives, the cause and effect is far less dramatic in the short term, meaning that there's no threat to life, but impacts the long term in a life-threatening way. We project by assuming what happened in the past will happen again automatically. We go from past to future and rob ourselves of the present, and the present is where life is lived. We take a sample size far too small for actual use and extrapolate a biased thought of what we think will happen and label it as a fact. But how can we be so sure? We project what we don't want to happen way more than what we do want to happen. How many times have you said, I just don't want X, Y, or Z to happen? Now, is that a statement that X, Y, or Z will happen, or is it a legitimate concern or question? We project as a way to control and hedge against not having control, which is a paradox of life in itself. Why is our need to control so controlling? Projection is a form of judgment. We take a tiny bit of information and paint an entire picture. The projection happens very fast and we buy into it even faster. But we have a choice. It starts with being aware we are projecting in the first place. We must adjust the projection, not by looking at the movie screen, but to the source, the film and the projector itself. By seeing, we can then examine, and by increasing our awareness, we can take appropriate action to serve our lives in a wholesome, healthy, positive way, if we so choose. Common projection symptoms include anxiety about what will come, stress with the unknown, getting worked up about a future event and already classifying it as bad before it's even begun, thinking yourself or others will or have failed before the chance for them to act has even happened. What if the projection was more positive? And it's not just wishful thinking. Neuroscientists call it priming, and the results are staggering. By considering our projection as an image or story we think we know, but really we don't know, based off minimal information, it logically makes sense to reconsider and reorient. But emotions impede logic and logical action. So our projection is more an expression of an emotion into the future. And when we project in the present, in our daily lives, we carry that into the future. We find what we are looking for and we perceive what we project. So let's project the change we want and follow through with action, not the shit we don't. And then there's a journal piece after that. But standard journal, you can kind of read that. So that's that. Probably not as easy to digest that listening, which is why you have to kind of read it and whatnot. But that's been a big part of that's been a big part that we've been working on. Projection and how quickly we project something. So
what would you say, like, we run into that the most with? I mean, what do you think a major area of that with people is? Like, for us, I definitely think in relationships, it's a big one.
Yeah.
And when you were reading that, I was thinking about, that, like, pattern, like, extrapolating a small piece of something that's way too small of a size, to make a judgment about.
Yeah.
But it's also, like, that desire for, like, creating a pattern. Like, oh, yeah, this is how it's going to go. Creating that, and that's not really...
Right.
That's not a pattern. You just decided it was going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that it's impossible. Maybe not impossible. It's natural to have some form of projection because that's also the way our brain kind of works. And if somebody pulls into your driveway, the projection is that they're probably going to get out and, like, maybe ring the doorbell or approach your house or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
Like, there's projection happening all the time. And so that's, like, kind of all of that. Where in the personal development or the mindset space that it really, once we kind of are like, holy shit, once we pay attention to it, I think then we can see, like, whoa, I am always projecting something or spinning something in a way that's
like not to make it cliche, but it's basically taking you away from actually seeing what's happening in the moment, because you've already decided what's happening, and then you almost taint the present.
Right, and you change your present. Like
right.
if you ask me something, and you're doing a million different things, or I'm doing a million different things, and you ask me a question, and I interpret it one way, right? It's like, oh, Kay was like she sounded like she was kind of upset. You could have been clearing your throat, or you could have had something stuck in your throat or whatever, and if I didn't know that, right, I would interpret that and then make a big story about why you're pissed off at me, and how really it's me who should be pissed off at you, because blah blah blah, like you're whatever. And now I'm like, oh, now I have to like get defensive and step over, and now I have to be pissed off at you. And it's like, why are you pissed off at me? It's like, why are you pissed off at me? And it's like, what? So it's taking these fragments of information that we really don't quite know, and making an entire story out of it.
Yeah.
And that will change your life one way or the other. And it's, I'm not saying good, bad, or whatever, but like that changes that changes your experience.
Yeah. And I do think that, I know one of before I became a co-host, one of your Singleton podcasts, I think you were talking about what you're looking for, you know, like you'll find, and you use like relationships as an example.
Yeah.
And someone found that like there was a couple of people I feel like that found that like really helpful. And I do think what's interesting about, relationships are a big piece of people's lives,
of course, obviously.
But then when you look at it, it's really like, okay, well, you can't improve your relationship without improving yourself. And so this topic, I do think, sure, it relates to everything in your life, but I think for us, like, I think it's been a big one in our relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's something like, and it can be, I think the projection piece can really impact like silly little things or bigger things. But just your example, like, that's something I think that people do every day, is projecting because of like maybe what their spouse or their partner or whatever the person in your relationship has maybe done in the past. You almost like don't give them a chance to show up differently. You've already projected what they're going to do, and that can be then challenging for that person to get outside of that like. So then it becomes almost like in a relationship, projecting on the other person keeps them from making progress. So now you're almost like getting in the way of that person's progress, which is kind of fun.
You're not even giving them a chance to be different, because you are going to look for validation for your projection. Right. And that's kind of, it's like, whoa, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. Like 100% you are. Now, if you're unaware of the projection, if you're aware of it, you're like, okay, and we have this, like, so, I don't want to, like, use you all the time, but
sure. Careful.
You are somebody who goes after things. You
can use me in positive ways.
I am.
Just the negative examples will use you.
Yeah. That's good. You are quick to act, and you make things happen. You're not going to sit around for months on end, pondering, researching, digging in. Like, nope, you're going to be like, I'm going to go after it, I'm going to step forward, I'm going to see who it is, and whatever the adjustments have to happen. Sometimes that can sometimes kind of ride the line between maybe like reckless or not like entirely thought out, or just like not really knowing what the plan is or whatever, because that's just kind of it. Sometimes that pays off very well, sometimes that creates learning lessons, but that's kind of what makes you. So if we're doing something, and we've done things, we've talked about things and all the time because we work together, it's like before we even start a project or
Yeah,
make
if
a
you're
change,
already assuming I'm
it's like, all right, I need to adjust what I'm doing because Kay is gonna hear 3 words into this paragraph long thing that I have and already start acting. Or, oh, like, there she is. If you're fired up, you're like, yeah, let's go, like, and you're kind of being your authentic self too with it. It's like, oh, well, like, hold on, like, I'm not ready, or you're getting way ahead of me, or I'm not, and it's like, you might not actually be doing that. You might just be like, yeah, right on, like, what do you got next, or whatever, but, like, because that's my opinion, that's my bias,
Well,
that's my belief of you, based on something that you have done in the past. It's like, it's not like I'm even giving you really the chance. It's like,
don't you also think some of it's like you're talking about an example where it's kind of a negative, like we project, like there's probably been times, to your point, where I've done something really good with an idea, but we normally project the bad, not the good. So you're not sitting there projecting like, oh, Kay's gonna hear this and she's gonna like turn it into gold. You're projecting, I'm gonna act too hastily and do what I always do and blah blah blah.
Right.
So that's kind of what's also interesting, is like, why the hell wouldn't we project and give the person, if we're gonna project, why not project the good shit?
Right.
And give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think it comes from a place of, and for me personally, when I project, it's to avoid, like, the intent is kind of good in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, if I know that this is coming, which kind of is interesting because it goes back to the known and the unknown, but if I know this is coming, if I know that Bill's going to act this way, how do I adjust, kind of to our point, like, adjust the present to sidestep that?
Yeah.
But the reality is now you've done 2 things. You've projected and you've altered what your authentic action would be to try to accommodate for that. So now it's like kind of a double whammy, which for me does usually end up in, it ends up in a bad place, and I have to backtrack all the way back through the projection and back through the altering my course of action, and I end up right back where I started, where if I had just been honest or authentic and not projected, I would have had more success. So you can't really, it kind of creates this false sense of like controlling things that it's like it's an attempt to control things that you don't have control over.
Without a doubt. And that's
so the intent could be good, but it's still not healthy.
Yeah, and I mean, I think intent is a funny thing, because we've had a lot of times, like, and for years talking about, like, I don't fucking care about your intent.
Yeah, but that's...
And then, I'm just saying, that's something we've said.
Sure.
Where it's like, oh, I intend, it's like, I don't care. I didn't intend to offend you. It's like, well, but you did. So, what I'm saying is, like, that's not always the case. Like, your intentions obviously matter. I think the thing is that let's just check ourselves on how much we say, look, I didn't intend to do that. And it's like, well, do you actually know that? Because some of this stuff, like, sure, you didn't intend to probably be a malicious human being, but, like, your projection now, which is happening, unaware. Because intentional in intention means your awareness is high, and your choice is you're exerting your choice, right? A lot of people say, I didn't intend for that. It wasn't, my intentions were good. And I would kind of actually be like, well, no, you wanted the outcome to be a way that it wasn't. It wasn't necessarily about the intentions. It was more about the result. And so I think that gets into a tricky place.
Sure, and now we're getting down a rabbit hole.
But yeah, anyway.
But
so,
the point...
but with the projection, I think the biggest thing is looking for in your life times where you're like, okay, I'm taking this fragmented piece of information, this very small data point, while at the time, yes, it might feel big, and I'm not minimizing or discounting the impact it has. but what are you then doing with it? You know, if you were to take, it's like anybody, I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
it, but you understand what I'm
Sure.
saying. So first it's like the awareness of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just asking yourself, like, throughout the day, okay, I'm taking something small and I'm making it big, let's just say. What am I projecting?
Mm-hmm.
Not about myself necessarily, but like within my environment. What are this? How am I
So-
creating these images and these stories?
What do you have an example today? Something you think, if you're aware of that, like that you projected?
Today.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you did a workout. Like, I don't know, it could have been that. It could have been our discussion. We had a discussion.
We had a discussion. We had that. No, I mean, I think I was pretty good today without like I think it was just like, all right, accepting
Mm-hmm.
of what it is. You know, we were talking before the 9 about some stuff, and you know what the stuff you were bringing up was would have projecting my stuff would have been not good
Mm-hmm.
for that situation. You know, I think that the not the counter necessarily to projection, but an ally that can help if you are projecting a lot is really getting to know empathy
Mm-hmm.
and acceptance of, you know, others, acceptance of situations, acceptance of yourself, like just looking at your relationship with empathy
Mm-hmm.
and acceptance as a way to kind of just maybe not make it
Right, because
so-
ultimately the projection is kind of your stuff, and so empathy helps you to relate to the other person and stop you from just getting on your train and taking it from there.
Yeah, I started to project a little bit based on what I thought you needed, and because you were fairly emotional,
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking, okay, let me try to match some emotion, but also kind of steer us in a logical sense
Mhm.
as well. But trying to have there be some like not just having it be so sterile and lacking emotion. And you were kind of like, look, I'm not, like, I get it, but that's not what I need. And then it was like, yep, check fire. Like, that was not. And I kind of, so I projected a little bit because I've been in your
Mhm.
situation too. And I was like, okay, this is what she's doing. This is what I know.
Right, and that's where it's like that intent was to like try to, like I've been there before, but in that process, you're kind of missing what's right in front of you or what that person needs.
Right.
So-
And that's the thing with coaching where it's like, you know, the levels of active listening
Mhm.
and, you know, whatever school of thought you subscribe to. But it's like, it's not about me.
Mhm.
Like me being like, you know, in this
Right.
conversation. So I need to be like, sure, I might have a past experience, I might have a thought that's great, but like I need to pay attention to what's being said and not said, and like the energy right now, and be like, what do we have to do
Mhm.
right now? Not where do we want to go? Because I know in 17 minutes you're going to coach a class. So I'm
Mhm.
thinking, all right, if we can sort of like disarm a little bit in
Mhm.
terms of just the edge or the whatever, nudge us towards
Yeah.
like just kind of getting our head about us. But that's like, nope, now you're trying to solve other people's problems, and basically that's what I tried to do, and it was like, that's not working.
So it's kind of, but like projection's two things. One, it can be like in a vacuum for me, I project things. I project even about my life in the future, but then I can also project on other people. So it's kind of twofold. Like projecting, like for example, that like in a workout, like that workout example.
This workout today?
No, the workout for
Oh
this
yeah,
mindset.
yeah.
Like the projection for me, like I because I do actually do this sometimes in workouts, like the projection is like, okay, I'm not going to go that hard this minute because I have 30 more minutes of this, so I'm like projecting into the future of how
Yeah.
it's going to feel.
Yeah.
That's still within my experience. I'm not projecting that onto anybody else. But projecting onto someone else is like, someone comes to me, they're going to do that mindset workout, and I'm already talking to them about my experience. Like, well, I'm already projecting onto them my stuff. So do you know what I'm saying? It's both projecting with your own shit into the future about how things are going to go and not just letting them happen. And it's also projecting onto other people your own thoughts and not being there, which back to last week's episode, which you're talking about coaching, like that's where I think the best coaches, and like that's something I've understood from you and understood from, working with a coach, like they're not trying to solve your problem. That would be them projecting what they think the solution is for you, and they can't do that.
Right.
That's not.
And that's the thing with projection, where you make a story nonfiction and true, and it's like, yep, it's this, but really, like, you have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is like a fragment of a piece of information.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a judgment, there's a bias, there's a whatever in it. So if somebody's doing this projection workout, and I've done it, and I'm like, and I just tell them, like, here's a more realistic example. I was talking with George today, or yesterday, or 2 days ago, whatever. And before immersion, someone was telling them about tips for success for between the ears.
Mm-hmm. Gaming the system.
And it's like, that might have worked for you.
Mm-hmm.
That might work for George.
Mm-hmm.
But it might also have absolutely no bearing.
Right.
Because you don't know what is actually going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because
it's not happened yet.
Because it hasn't happened yet, and you're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know? So it's just a big old guess. But we're like, no, it's true. We buy into it. We believe it to be, and it's not.
Right. So that person projected their experience on, but almost that stuff is then like you start to ask about visualization, and we've talked about that.
Yeah.
So now you're projecting how things are going to go. What's funny about a lot of these things is they all connect. So like we've talked about visualizing
Mm-hmm.
and what you think about that, or your stance on it. So like, okay, I have a big interview tomorrow. I don't, but that would be interesting. I have a big interview tomorrow, or let's say next week. Next week, we're going to the Netherlands
Mm-hmm.
to connect with the Strong Fit people. And say I'm going to like do a visualization exercise about it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to imagine everything and how it goes and the podcast and what I'm going to say. I'm projecting what that experience is going to be like. And then I go there, and it's not like that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is another topic we talked about. So now the reality versus my projection of the reality, there's a gap there.
Mm-hmm.
And that causes just this panic. And
so
now my projection plus the difference of what's happened and not happened, like all of that stuff versus the alternative, which is like obviously preparing yourself in a responsible way for what you're about to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then going and like assessing like, okay, what's happening now? And let me use my tools now to apply to the present.
Yeah, your projection creates an expectation, and when expectation differs from reality, which it 9 times out of 10 does, you focus on the difference between the expectation and the reality, and what you didn't do leading up to this versus where you're at right now.
Right.
And that's presence. And that's what it's like kind of all about. That's why I don't like visualization as this catch-all. Oh, you gotta visualize. Oh, all the best visualize. All the best visualize. Bullshit. Because what the visual is, the dynamic landscape that you operate in, you don't know. Right. You know, and this was like this was always a thing. You know, whatever in the military or army or whatever. Let's just take a halo jump, for example. I'm gonna exit 12,500. I'm gonna dive out, turn left, and then pull. They're gonna be there. They're gonna be here. I'm gonna look down. I'm going to identify my landmarks. There's that. There's this. There's that. I'm gonna fly to that. I have my route. I know what I'm doing under canopy, right? I've got it all visualized. I've got it all rehearsed. I know. I've seen the terrain.
You've kind of memorized it.
I've memorized it. I get out, and it's fucking cloud.
What the point of it is. And I kind of had a thought, well, actually I was thinking about, like, when we talk about, like, learning and memorizing, and, like, a lot of the visualizing or projecting is kind of like memorizing the steps.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to go like this and this and this. If all the steps go perfectly like this, then nothing can go wrong. But really what you're doing is you're not understanding, like, you know, like the actual journey, or where you're at, or what your skills are, or what your tools are, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so we obviously we haven't really talked a lot about parenting, but a lot of people that listen are parents, or will be parents, and I think it's interesting, it's, you know, now that our kids are older and they have homework and things kind of count and matter, and trying to help them understand too, like that, like understanding what's happening and why, and the tools of now versus just memorizing the path to go, or just the end point.
Yeah.
Because then on the test, so like you've memorized that whole jump based on like this and this and this and this, and then it's cloudy. So the test comes, you think it's all this stuff, but then the things are different, or the questions, and it's like, shit, I don't know this. I only knew, you know, we just went through that the other night with Marcus. So I think it's so applicable, to everything. Like it really is, I think, a catch-all, like, projection. It's such a easy thing to throw out there, like, don't project onto other people, but it's really a bigger thing.
Yeah, I mean, you project onto other people, so you set others up for some course of action that you pretty much believe is going to happen, and then you look for that to validate your projection. Right. And then there's also within your own personal side, like projecting, this thing is going to be a nightmare. We put a fence up.
Yes.
And the town did not. Somebody complained, and then the town came and said, stop working, come down to the office. It was very much like you were getting in trouble in school or something.
We did get in trouble.
And I get down there and okay, this and that. They come by to look at what we did wrong.
Well, they approved it based on the drawing, and they came by because someone complained.
It's a whole mess. I projected in that we were going to be not able to build the fence because we kind of fucked up in the first place. That we were going to have to pay a substantial amount of money as a fine.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know all this.
Yeah, there's something.
Is that why you were so angry?
No.
That was something else. That was one of the other 999 reasons.
Come on now.
998.
That's better.
Okay, so we were gonna have to not build the fence. We would have to return all the wood, which probably you can't
not
return.
Returning.
Just lay
we
there
were
on
going
the lawn.
to waste people's time, waste a significant amount of money, and I was going to burn the municipal building down. I mean, the last part, not really. No, I'm just joking.
That's a bit extreme to be putting on a podcast.
I would flood it anyway. So that was like a projection that I made.
Yes, and when we were discussing it, what's funny about that is you were projecting all that. Now, you didn't share that with me, but you were very upset about this. Now, I wasn't happy either, but I felt like my projection, and I'm not saying I always have a more positive projection, but in this case, I wasn't thinking those things,
right? Which
may be ignorant, but I was thinking, like, my projection was like...
But ignorant to the projection, you're right. Like, ignorant, you were ignorant to my projection.
Ignorant to, like, I didn't even think about there could be a fine.
But that's my projection, though. That's the thing. That's the fucking made-up story that I'm saying, the fine, and like, so you are ignorant to it. Was there a fine? No. Right. Can we build a fence? Yes.
Yeah, so the projection I had was like, it's going to be, this is kind of annoying, but I'm seeing, like, my projection was like, we're going to have a fence one day, like, and we do.
That's what that
but what's funny about that is if you shared with me your projection, I probably would have gotten back, I would have gone down that, like, I didn't even think about it, fine. Now, I tried to pull you into mine. I don't know that I pulled you in, but maybe I got you out of wanting to flood the municipal building. So, but I think that's where it's tricky in a relationship as well, the navigating that. I think,
and that's where the awareness, I think, like, man, it all comes back to this, where, like, okay, if you are in a relationship, with your husband or wife, with your son or daughter, with your, whatever, having a conversation about this,
Mm-hmm.
and like, hey, I realize that sometimes like I project this or that.
Yeah, I mean, parenting, Jesus, like people project a lot on their kids.
Yeah, Mark
What
is
I
getting
did,
Mark is
what
having
I
a
had-
77 in honors math as a
Mhm.
freshman. Is 3 projections away from him being a drug addict, homeless, jobless.
Sure.
Because like, but seriously, you know that's the thing, and he's gonna. And it's like, holy crap! The kid just needs to learn how to study because literally no one's ever taught him.
Right. Well,
And
the other thing is the projection is, and I think that's probably the most dangerous thing as a parent is like if we already decide, to your point, like okay, he's not like we've talked about. Let's see you work harder. Here's some tools. Now it's the chance. If we already project that he's not going to do those things,
Yeah.
what kind of chance does he have? Because we're
None.
just looking for like, well, you had 5 minutes and you didn't do a math problem during it.
Right.
It's like, well, now you're just looking for those things. So
Right. We're
I think
setting
that's
him up to fail.
yeah, I think that's just a good thing for parents to have. I think it's totally natural, and of course, when you think about maybe what you did or your habits, or like, I don't want that for you, so I'm kind of projecting what I would have liked to have changed about how I did things, but that's not really fair for them. So I think having that awareness from the parent side, and then about parenting with your spouse, because that's another thing, like just helps everybody kind of stay present with like, let's take it one day at a time versus everybody having their own imaginary scenario that they're coming up with that doesn't relate to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really big one to just, if people were, to just look at that. I mean, what that could probably do to, and it's helped our relationship, I think.
It
the
has.
awareness
And
doesn't mean
the
we
awareness.
stop doing
no,
it.
No, definitely. And that's a big thing about awareness is like, and we say about this all the time, but like awareness alone is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not from like a scarcity thing. It's just like, it's not going to, awareness in itself is not going to be the change. Like that's where the action and the follow through has to happen. But with the awareness of projection and having the shared vocabulary and common experience and vernacular to be like, hey, okay, hear me out on this. I think you might be projecting a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is what I'm seeing. What are you feeling? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, like, yeah, the strength of your relationship is going to depend upon if you can or cannot have that conversation.
Sure.
But it provides a common ground to discuss. Mm-hmm. And like at the individual level too, you have to do that as well. You have to like, when someone else maybe isn't around, or if it's at work or just with you personally, like, what am I projecting here? Like but there has to be something to trigger that and to have that awareness piece, because if you just say like, oh, I'm going to think about that, you're not.
Right.
Like, because the habitual nature of things, and just kind of like what we were talking about before about having like a barometer or thermometer to just be like, just a measuring stick, a quick like, hey, where am I at? A snapshot thing. And that's where so much of this is so important. Yeah. To be like, I need to have the habit formed, not mindlessly, but intentionally and in control, and not just reactive, but proactive. And this is an element that I want to see, which is, I think, super important. And I think that's where that's just from what I was saying. That's where, with the practice, I'll say it involves you in it, and it gives you a physical experience that you won't forget. To lock it in, to look at it and experience it. The book is you're in the book. Like it's think of that like a 3D like holographic thing. Like, projection. Like I didn't make that up. Now the mindset and the physical thing, I did, but these concepts and these principles that are very powerful and that are ages old are great. But if they just stay on the paper, in a book, that's not, So.
Yeah, last week I was thinking about the projection, like a little bit different way, but a couple things. One, that, like, just to go back to the relationship thing, like, I think I was talking to Kyla, who I'm using as a coach, like about the things that, we didn't really use the word projection, but like the things that I've kind of already decided that you might think that you have and that's such a, like, how can you battle against that? Like, because I've already decided.
And it's a complete guess. That's the thing.
Sure.
Like,
so I've not said to you, hey, I think that you think this. I've just decided it for myself, and then I'm going to operate from that place. So, like, a not that personal, easy example. I like to watch shows. You like to read.
Yeah.
If I decide that every time I watch a show, you literally think I'm stupid or, you know, like not an intellectual person because I decided to watch a show instead of read a book.
What show?
I'm watching whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what show.
I know. I was just joking.
But, like, that's one that could become problematic if I've already decided that. Well, for both of us.
Yeah, for sure.
But, like, you haven't said any, like, okay, I'm going to
I've
go watch
literally
a
never
show.
thought that, too. That's what's so, like, you tell me that, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? That is ridiculous.
Right, but, like, if that's what I believe, now I've put you in a position where, like, you don't even know that I think that.
No.
What are you supposed to do to change, like, so you don't even know it? But I'm continuing to create this, and every time I do that, I'm actually strengthening my argument that's completely falsified.
Well, and what's the show you're currently watching?
So I'm watching this Modern Love, these little short episodes that are based on New York Times column that was written about, you know, different little people's, like, small stories about love, relationships.
Cool.
So positive.
Yeah. I am sometimes not one for
Fun.
that type of consumption or fun.
Right.
So if I'm on the couch reading and you come down to get a drink of water and go back up, and I make an innocent little joke, like, hey, how's your love story today? Like, did they fall in love yet? Or, you know, it's just something stupid. I haven't made it yet, so it's definitely stupid. You know that. But anyway, if I just make a joke where I really mean nothing about it, and I'm just like making like throwaway small talk, just like little.
That could be a trigger that then.
That could be like a
thing.
huge thing. Yeah. So that's that little fragment of information.
Sure.
So you already have this thing, this story playing in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's this little fragment of information.
Mm-hmm.
Bill is ridiculing, making fun, think I'm this, think I'm, and then it's like, boom, now you've got this whole very complicated, very dynamic movie with character plots and twists and everything.
Sure. It's just a
damn near immediately think. When in fact it was just like, it's like that meme of the guy and the girl in bed. Like, what do you think about? She's got this whole crazy thing, and he's just like, I wonder why my motorcycle won't start.
Right, but so that, and then to tie to the physical, last week, that was something that like came up that I was tasked with, or like a question that came up that Kyla posed that I had, like, wow, I have to think about. That's something for me to think about. And that day, it was like, I was gonna go for a walk. That was like kind of my thing, to go for a walk, put a weight vest on, like whatever, go for a walk. And so like, even though it was just a walk, I knew going into the walk, like, this is something I want to think about on this walk. It was 40 minutes. And like, to your point, like that walking, the moving, like the environment, like the leaves, all that stuff, like that is locked in association with that, versus I'm going to think about this on the way to the gym, and then I'm going to do work, and I'm going to think about it some more. Like, having an experience that's tied to that mindset and to what you're thinking is really powerful. So it doesn't, you know, I think this is where some people lose a little bit of the understanding of, like, they misunderstand the practice, the physical piece. Like, the movement and the attaching your body to what's going on in your brain is what's important. Not if it's a burpee or a squat or a bike. I mean, you design these workouts obviously to use a tool that you feel like is the best, the optimal fit.
Yeah, I don't just make work.
Right. But I mean, in the absence of using that tool, it doesn't have to be that.
Well,
like,
there's people that are doing the
linchpin.
practice. No, not at all. And there's people that are doing the practice and getting value out of it that are working through an injury, that are, you know, on the call, on both group calls, Sunday and Monday, people were honest and said, like, I didn't do the workout this week. You're not doing the workouts. Like, I'm not doing all of them. So people are going to kind of come in and come out. But because that's not, because if you want just a workout, then go to the gym, then do something else.
Well, the other thing is like today's workout, for example, with class, we were talking about it afterwards. There was a breathing assignment to kind of keep it in the right stimulus, to have some recovery. There was trying to feel your muscles actually working, the correct ones. So like, for example, that workout where you can't even think about counting because you're so focused on what you're doing, how would you possibly then think about a mindset topic? So while there are some workouts that don't, you can't just say like, oh, every time I work out, that's when I'm going to think about this mindset topic, which is why you curate workouts that will allow for that.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it's not just as simple as, or it's not just as extreme as like, oh, it's this crazy workout.
Well, and it's not just work out and think hard. Like
right.
that's just
that
not,
doesn't even.
And it's also not like think what I think.
Right. So my point is like that's definitely tying an experience or something physical. It doesn't have to be always intense to that. What's going on in your brain is the point, is the magic kind of the practice.
Yeah, and it's really cool to see and hear how people are making it theirs. Yeah. And that's really what I feel strongly about. Like the most, like obviously we have to have a centralized like common experience, a common ground, and there's coaching and there's this and that. But you know, making it, hearing how people are evolving it within their own, and that's adapting it to be in their life, and that is the essence of it. Yeah. That's the point. Not to say there are no certificates given out saying that you're a between the years practice graduate.
That would be really cool though. I want to get them and frame them right next to my.
Then you have to do all the workouts.
So anyway, I think we were trying to keep these.
Yeah, we're good. I think we're good.
An hour, but so, and that's another topic for another day. Is that this to end on this. It's great to decide today, like, wow, this really resonated. Projection. Don't expect to like eliminate all projection within a day, just because now you said like no. So it takes time, and
takes time, takes effort,
takes more than 4 weeks. Or a week or a day, so it's sort of like, and I think what I think you would agree on encouraging people to do is, if it's something you want to work on or you're identifying like, wow, I do this a lot. If it's in your relationship, maybe include that other person in it. Like, hey, I listened to something today. I owned that, or I realized like, wow, I do a lot of this, and include them in on it, because I think that goes a long way. Like I'm working on not doing that, so they know like, hey, I think. Can you help me with this?
Yeah, I think, and you're right, and I think that's, you owe it to the people around you to share the shit in your life that you feel valuable.
Yeah.
And that's not, I'm not saying that so that you share between the ears, but in fact, but what I was thinking about was like with StrongFit, like that was a major thing for me to, because I wanted to share that with you, because I've had, and saw and experienced a tremendous value. And it's like kind of back to like, don't be the hoarder.
Right.
And so with this stuff, like this mindset stuff, share it with the people in your life, because it's also going to add a completely different dynamic to it that you simply couldn't experience on your own in isolation. And that's
one of the things I think that I continue to think is a good future project, just because so many people it's come into our conversations and in our own life, is like a family practice. Like even just sharing some of this stuff, like going through, like there's a ton of stuff, just people who are in that kid age,
it's
12 and up, like there's just, like we do try to include the kids, but it could be a cool thing to do. So
I think this
lots
year
of ideas.
we're ready for it. Yeah. Probably in
2020.
Yeah, the second half though.
2020, that's kind of cool. I feel like if 2020 can't be a good year with the name 2020.
Why would
2020 vision?
I don't want 2020 vision. I want better than 2020. 2020 is the good job. You're not fucking broken.
Well, isn't that good?
I'm kidding.
All right, that's it.
I'm kidding. But really, my vision, I would like to have better vision.
Well, it's only going to get worse from here.
No, it's not.
You know what they say.
What do they say? Carrots make your eyes work?
Yeah. You can wish in one hand.
Right. Don't.
I won't.
Okay.
Family
Alright.
podcast.
Yeah,
Okay.
family podcast. All right, that's all we got.
If you want to know
we're
the end
on,
of that, just send me a message.
Yeah. We're on social media, Instagram, that whole bit, at Between the Ears, at Bill Anthony's, at Cariana Anthony's, all of that.
Yep.
Redoing the website as well, which, another project, a lot of stuff going off to send that to, the web department is on that.
Yeah.
The media department's on the podcast, so yeah, we'll have to tell the team of people we have working for us. Anyway,
Okay.
always looking for that stuff. The seminar is in February. Don't be that person that waits till the last minute to register, because out of spite I might shut it down. Just kidding. And then the practice is starting again in January. And but yeah, anything else, just shoot us a note. Hopefully you enjoyed this week, and talk to you next week. Actually, we won't, or will we?
We'll see.
We'll have to
TBD.
get something set up.
TBD.
Yeah.
From the Netherlands.
TBD. Okay. Goodbye.